Dustin, very good to see you. We are diving into the headlines today. A popular financial guru proposes an 8% withdrawal rate, but is that realistic? Recently, Dave Ramsey, who is a well known financial expert, dismissed the common advice to withdraw only 4% of your retirement savings annually as, quote, moronic. Instead, he is advocating for an 8% withdrawal rate. The financial world exploded following his advice. What do you think?
Yeah. So, I love Dave's advice when it comes to paying off credit cards. Makes a lot of sense. I'm
Mhm.
100% there with him. In this case, when we're talking about withdrawal rates, I'm not going to pull any punches. The suggestion of an 8% safe withdrawal rate, that's a reckless suggestion. It's reckless advice. And in this case, it's based on bad math. So, in this case, Dave, he's discounted entirely, it looks like, the difference between an average return and a geometric return. It's something that he needs to pay a little closer attention to, because some of the returns he's suggesting here, the investors aren't actually receiving those once you unpack the math. And he's also not taking into account volatility or sequence of returns risk, really critical. And this isn't something that you have to take my word for. Okay, you can look to the academics. I got my RICP designation from the American College of Financial Services. There's some really highly respected professors and academics there. Michael Fink, David Blanchett, Wade Fowle. They wrote an article where they unpacked the math that Dave is using in this case, and they explained in detail why an 8% withdrawal rate won't work, or won't work in a safe way. And so what they determined, one of the things they mentioned in that article is, had a retiree in the early 2000s held the portfolio that Dave Ramsey suggested, the 4-fund portfolio, and attempted an 8% withdrawal rate, that during that time period, they would have exposed themselves to running out of money in a period as short as 13 years.
Yikes. That is shorter than the average retirement. So I was also surprised, Dustin, that Ramsey also recommended retirees invest all their assets in equities. Wouldn't this be exposing retirees to a lot of risk and market volatility?
Yeah, so it's a really simple idea, right? Equities have the highest long-term return, so you put everything in equities, right? Keep in mind, when you add equities to an investment portfolio, they do a couple of things. So equities will add long-term potential growth to a portfolio and act as a hedge against inflation. That's a good thing. So retirees want to have some position in equities inside the portfolio. On the other hand, adding those equities to the portfolio adds volatility and adds uncertainty. So it's going to make your returns less consistent. It's going to make your retirement income less consistent. So we have to balance that need for growth and an inflation hedge with volatility.
Mhm.
If we look back to the financial crisis, over that time period, the S&P 500 drew down about 53%. So if somebody was retiring, in the bottom of the financial crisis, taking a 53% loss on a portfolio of 100% stocks, if they were relying on an 8% rule, understand what that means. Going into retirement, they would now be relying on a 16% withdrawal rate, because they've got one half of the money left, right? There's
Mhm.
just no way over any length of time that's going to work, going to be sustainable in a safe way.
Right. So I want to revisit, of course, the common advice, which is the 4% rule. And that's because, Dustin, as you know, even this is under debate, this percentage rate. So why is that?
I would say it's less under debate now than it was in the recent past.
Hmm.
So Bill Bengen published his study on the 4% rule in the 90s. And at that time, so the 4% rule assumed the retiree would have a portfolio of 50% stocks, 50% bonds. Well, at the time, you could get attractive returns on bonds. And then we went through an extended period of time, about 15 years, where that wasn't the case. Okay, so the academics, they revisited that 4% rule, and a lot of them said, well, maybe 3% is really the safe number, or less.
Hmm.
Well, the good news is, now that we can get attractive yields, attractive returns on bonds again, that 4% rule is a lot more reliable,
I see.
I would say. And keep in mind, a retiree, they could start with a higher withdrawal rate, if they're willing to make some adjustments along the way. And
Right.
I want to make clear just real quickly what that 4% withdrawal rate means. If we're saying 4%, the investor starts with 4%. That's inflation adjusted. That means the next year they're going to take a little bit more and a little bit more thereafter every year to account for inflation.
Mm-hmm. So brass tacks then, Dustin, what percentage are you recommending to clients and how often are you revisiting that number?
It depends upon the client and their situation, but most people, if we're talking about a 30-year retirement, we're probably talking somewhere between a 4 and a 5% rate. And again, we may be able to start that higher if somebody is willing to make adjustments along the way when markets are down. And then we look at this every year when we do reviews. If our portfolio is outperforming the plan, well, that gives us permission to increase those withdrawal rates and stay on track.
So would that then get us to a point, when could an 8% withdrawal rate be sustainable?
Okay, so again, what I said before, if we're talking 4 or 5%, maybe higher than that, if we're willing to make some adjustments along the way. If you're willing to make really big adjustments, there may be cases where an 8% withdrawal rate would work. If you're comfortable holding a portfolio of 100% equities and you're comfortable in down markets, reducing your withdrawals to 0, you could probably make an 8% withdrawal rate work. But it's not going to be in any way predictable for you. It's not going to provide you a consistent, reliable retirement income. And that's the reason why most people save for retirement in the first place.
Right. Even just hearing you say that, and the withdrawals of 0 makes me feel anxious. Dustin, if somebody would like to speak with you about finding their own unique withdrawal rate, what's the best way to reach you?
They can text me a question at 830-476-2505 or reach out on the website to book a free chat at longlivemymoney.com.
Great. Dustin, thank you.
Thanks, Aaron.